Hey you, and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this whole video we are talking about a town called York, which is technically a city, very generous with that term, and its citizens, denizens, especially one Mr. Mayor. The big dog, name of Melvin Roberts, man about town. Him and his glamorous girl Julia were known across York County. Even more so though in February 2010, Julia's birthday of all days, when the driveway to the Roberts home would become a, well, you know, let's just give it a, I lost it. So what can I say about the city of York that's worth saying? I joke, wouldn't be one of my videos if I didn't take the P. It's beautiful, it's historic, it's fantastic.
York County offers the advantages of a South Carolina location and an innovative business climate with quick access to Charlotte, the largest metropolitan area in the two Carolinas.
Wow, color me impressed. What a city. It's my new favorite. A great place to live. I've never been there, so I'll have to begrudgingly take their word for it. Looks good according to Google Maps anyway. It's in the Down Carolina. Maybe 8,000 people live there on a good day. The population centers around the 35-year-old mark. A lot of young couples, small businesses, and a strong sense of community. The crime rate is fairly low, and so, as Mayor Man, the town kinda runs itself. Okay, so that's pretty much all I have to say about that move. Back in 2010, the town had about 600 less people than living there today. So hey, Mr. Mayor Melvin Roberts had an easy job, or he had been, when he was in charge. He wasn't the mayor currently, but it just sounds better. In 2010, Melvin Lee Roberts was 79 years of age, born in 1930. A successful guy, he served during the Korean War, then attorney for 55 years, your man was on city council, and was elected mayor for 2 terms. He was someone who believed in the law. You know, he thought it was a good thing. He just wanted to help people. He mainly practiced as a defense attorney, helping both the rich and the poor. And hey, if that makes you a few De Niros along the way, what's the harm in that? And Melvin had that in spades. But he was pretty but he's pretty generous with his caboose, if you knew him. Melvin had 2 grown boys he was close with, David and Ronnie, 1 grandchild, and in his late 60s, Melvin was partnered with Julia Phillips. They would never marry, but they would remain together for over a decade. Until what happened, happened. And she would be with him on the night of the 4th of February, her birthday, 2010. A dark and dreary night. Spring hadn't quite sprung just yet. And generally, that time of year, it's kind of pretty shit. The good parts of winter are over and summer is still a long way away. And it was in the evening, after 7 p.m, that this call was made.
York County 911, you need police, fire, medical.
Listen to me careful. My name is Julia Phillips. I'm on Roberts Avenue in York. Okay? I've been robbed. God knows. Please help me.
Melvin lived on the outskirts of his beloved York, on Roberts Avenue, yes, related, in a house he had built himself with a big old driveway. And it was up that driveway that York Police Department investigators legged it. What they found was odd. Inside a vehicle, they found a woman. They found Julia. She was all duct taped up, head, wrists, covered in dirty mud and leaves, and she was shaking uncontrollably. A couple of meters away, a body. Melvin's body. The caller had been Julia Phillips. They had been attacked right outside their home by someone. Julia was 66 years old. she would tell people. Glamorous, widowed since 1999, so doing a bit of math, she didn't wait very long. And she had one son, Hunter. In their relationship, Julia wanted for nothing. Melvin was generous, and he treated her well with holidays and luxuries, and, well, she was, good at that stage. But she was fun, she had an attitude, and she was a great match for Melvin. She managed a clothing boutique, Julia's, in the town of Gaffney, her hometown, about 30 minutes away. The building was actually owned by Melvin. He was supportive of her and her goals and dreams. So what happened in February 2010 is a bit of a shock, not gonna lie. Over the next few days, the police would release very little, other than, the usual shite. Hey, yeah, pursuing leads, reviewing evidence, that's about it. They wouldn't say how Melvin had been killed, just that Julia, she had been attacked, she had been tied up and then left behind a brick wall on the property. After the attacker tied up Julia, Melvin, he wasn't at home at the time, so this guy waited and waited. And then when Melvin did come back, there was a brief struggle. Julia managed to free herself from the duct tape, but by the time she got out, Melvin was dead, and the killer vanished into the woods. Now, the killer, this guy, he didn't take anything. Melvin even had $400 on him that remained on him. He didn't even try and enter the house, so it was pretty clear to the investigators that Melvin was the target. The police just said they were looking for a guy between 5'9", 5'11", 200, 250 pounds, possibly Hispanic. Now, all of this came from Julia. Melvin had been beaten to shite with an object of some kind. Someone had also taken a pop at him, but the bullet just grazed his ear and put a hole in his coat. So, Melvin was beaten, he was shot at, but it was a zip tie around his neck that did him in, which is probably the worst way to go out of the 3 different ways. As it was a dark, wet, dirty out evening, they did find footprints. Dogs were called to follow the scent, but it ended on the road. The person got in the car and drove off. And no evidence had been left behind. No duct tape, no, gun. Just the zip tie around Melvin's neck. So, not a whole lot there to begin with. Just from whatever you can get, from the person who witnessed it all. And Julia was ready to talk that very night.
Have a seat for me, Miss Julie.
He kept saying money, money.
He just kept saying money, money. He was so wanting money.
And then he'd take up my eyes, my mouth, put my hands together. I thought I heard something like a pipe or something that somebody picked up.
Why do you think you heard something that sounded like a pipe?
I don't know, because I heard it hit the ground.
Okay.
And then I heard a shot.
You heard a shot?
It had to have been a shot. I'm the type of person who's up at 5 o'clock in the mornings reading my Bible. And I honestly believe that God protected me from all of this. I really do.
Can I have one of those Kleenexes?
You have all the Kleenexes you need.
Can I get some pictures right quick while we're in the warmth?
Now, we're going to use these for Playboy?
No.
That's how they got a description of this guy. She spoke with the police still covered in duct tape. Well, they would need to speak to her that night, they wanted fresh information. No, that frozen shite. She said she was getting bags out of her car to bring into the house. She had just done the shopping, and someone came. So that was all they had for the first couple of days. Then they brought Julia in to reconstruct what had happened. Wow. You'd think it would be kind of traumatic, but there you go. I mean, you'd think so, but you'd be wrong. She was in great form. Yeah, sure, here, come on, I'll show you how I was beaten on my partner of 10 years, brutally murdered. I'm mad.
And I say, who are you? And what are you doing? What do you want? Why are you here? Why are you doing this? And he takes his hand and he smacks me on the head and he says, shut up. Shut up. He puts me in a position like this.
Is that the type of sound that you heard?
Not exactly. Said him with a dialect. You want American like I am speaking English? at this man so bad. I love Melvin Roberts so much.
So who was this man who wasn't American like she was, speaking with English? Well, attorneys come up a lot in these old videos because they can make enemies. Now, Melvin was a defense attorney, not a prosecutor, and, like I said, he represented rich and poor alike. Still, there could be folk out to get him, specifically him. From his attorney days, he had rubbed people the wrong way at times, for sure. He was a straight shooter, maybe too straight. Shooting from the hip isn't always a good quality. But he also had property, Roberts Realty. So, there was a good few names on the list. For example, he had recently gotten into a fight with a couple who rented from him. A couple who were not American. Also with his handyman. He'd been arguing with him the day he died. They ended up taking over 80 DNA samples from the various people they had spoken to. And they had found some DNA on the zip tie that was around Melvin's neck, so... No, not much. So, dead end right there once again. Maybe go back and look at where this started, something in Melvin and Julia's life. Inside the house, they found a lot of empty pill bottles, ones named after opioids. Also, Julia's store, Julia's boutique. It started out as very fancy and glamorous, like Julia. Now it was a bit of a dump, like Julia. In fact, Julia had been doing the old from till to pocket routine at her own store, as she had a serious opioid addiction. It turned out she was going to some back alleys looking to buy a little something. She had even been to rehab on Melvin's dime, but it obviously slipped up again. In fact, it always kept coming back to Julia.
I really don't want to ask it, but I have
ahead.
to. Did you do anything to Melvin?
Absolutely not.
How was you and Melvin's relationship?
Great. It's sort of a private thing, but, Melvin, to be his age, was physically, active in every way.
I wanted to get out of the car and go touch him and see if he was okay, but I was thinking, let's go to work. And I sort of knew, I think that was it, that maybe his days on earth weren't long, but we didn't think that was that short. It could have been money they were after. I never saw a man get no money. I don't believe that. I think somebody had it out for him.
Her story kept changing. The duct tape around her wrists it didn't look like she had been attacked. More like, a frail old lady, don't want to hurt ya. That's my old lady voice. Good, good. She said her face had been covered with duct tape, so she didn't see him. But she would also say he had dreadlocks and dark skin. She said she had been pushed face first into the mud, but wasn't terribly muddy at all, even though it was a very wet evening. Then she said she had heard a gunshot, but she was behind a wall. Testing her hands, said no shit she heard it. It came from her hands. Well, her sleeves to be precise. There was gunshot residue on her sleeves. It was 3 months after the death of Melvin Roberts that Julia was arrested and charged with murder.
Phillips is charged with the murder of 67-year-old Melvin Roberts, who we're told she was dating. He was found strangled with a zip tie back in February of 2010. Phillips has pleaded guilty to breach of trust and was ordered to pay restitution. Prosecutors say Phillips admitted to taking rent money from tenants in buildings that Roberts owned and not giving that money to realtors.
Now, she's pretty old and frail. Could she have done this? Involved? I mean, I think from everything, the whole kit and caboodle, it's pretty clear she was involved, but actually physically doing it, I don't think so. She was like 100 pounds. And she had said she was 66, but her relatives said she's she's more like 6 years older than 66. And why? Relatives would say they were great together. They had a very loving relationship the entire time. Julia denied having anything to do with it. So what could have happened? Well, remember they had another footprint. So, murder for hire, looky likey. Her son had a criminal record, but he had an alibi. A retired cop said her son Hunter was miles away fixing an old computer, which I hope is not a euphemism. So who actually killed Melvin? Then, who?
Called this press conference this morning to announce another initiative we're taking in an investigation of Melvin Roberts' murder. We do not believe that she acted alone. We are dedicated in our efforts to provide justice for Melvin Roberts and for peace of mind and closure for the Roberts family.
We're still asking anybody who knows anything about the murder of our father to come forward and help the police fully solve the case. We can't rest till we close Dad's case.
They were never able to link her to anyone via footage, via bank statements, paying someone, calls, text messages, emails, whoever she was contacting, whoever actually killed Melvin while she was standing right beside him. Well, she covered her tracks well, which is weird when she made so many mistakes later that she got caught. She couldn't keep her own story straight. In August 2013, Julia went on trial. It would be tough, it was all circumstantial.
Money was the motive.
At today's murder trial for a woman accused of killing a prominent York County attorney began even before the attorneys made their opening arguments.
If you believe that the defendant is guilty of doing one thing, just one thing, on the night Melvin Roberts was murdered, to aid in that murder, then she is guilty.
They wrapped duct tape around her head, and she's saying, "What are you doing? What do you want?" And all that they say is money, money, money.
But nothing was taken from Phillips or Roberts, and police say Phillips and an accomplice put the duct tape on themselves before Roberts was strangled to death. Prosecutors also showed pictures of Phillips' clothes that night. Police say they weren't as wet or muddy as they should be if someone had been tied up on the ground for 30 minutes on a rainy night, as she claims.
And a witness did come forward. Whoa, out of the blue, what are the odds of this guy? Saying that years before Julia had asked him to kill Melvin, he decided to only mention it now. And then the why. Well, there was a why. Why not?
He wasn't paying her bills anymore, and that he wasn't having anything to do with her. He wouldn't even touch her.
Melvin and Julia were in a tense period at the time, namely due to, well, you guessed it. Melvin was footing the bill for her failing store and her drug habit, and he wasn't too keen on that. He was cutting her off, no more dough. And Julia then started racking up numerous debts, even stealing money renters were paying to Melvin. So if Melvin died, she would get a lot, including property. The building her store was in, that would have been hers. Well, if he died soon, because she suspected his will would soon be changed. He'd never get a chance to.
Detective Mumont testified that Phillips never shed any tears and seemed mostly concerned about herself.
Once in a while, she'll mention Melvin. But if you look from the 911 through this scene, it's always about her.
The defense had a hard time fighting back. They said it was a robbery gone wrong. And if it was murder for hire, who was the murderer? Julia Phillips was found guilty of murder. Her sentence, 30 years, which at her age was effectively a life sentence.
Gonna use these for Playboy?
The actual person who killed, who did pull the trigger, literally, and overpowered Melvin, to this day, all these years later, has never been identified. Hunter, Julia's son, has always been a suspect, but he was never charged with anything. He had a strong alibi. The sons of Melvin have still, well, they haven't stopped looking for the real killer in their community.
7 years ago tomorrow, my father was brutally murdered by his longtime girlfriend, Julia Phillips. We are still actively working the case. The police are actively working the case. We will never stop working the case. What we hope is that someone, somewhere, will have the compassion to come forward.
Julia's first husband, who passed away in 1999, Brian Phillips, his body was later exhumed. His children wanted his death re-examined. Maybe it wasn't the heart attack, it appeared to be. But nothing was found. And there you have it. Another one to add to the list of like a tale of greed resulting in murder. It's really curious that the actual killer, though, is still out there. I mean, there's no way. Julia, I think she weighed 130 pounds. There's no way she would have been able to do what was done to Melvin. Like, there was clearly another person there who helped Julia make it look like what it kind of sort of looked like.
The Christian lady that she presented herself to be, she did not make her peace with God. She died in prison, and she did not help us, at least to my knowledge.
And finally, in 2016, Julia, she never gave up who the other person was. She always pled innocent. In 2016, she passed away in prison.
I just hope she died a painful death, let's put it that way.
So she ain't so glamorous anymore. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time to do so and be here with me. Plugs. Alright, I should probably plug some things. There's t-shirts. If you want to check out that chapter branded merch, you can in the links below. Or on Patreon, where you get early access to videos, exclusive videos, a couple of other bits and bobs. Check it out too in a link somewhere down there. I really am shit at plugging my own stuff, but sure, here. There you go. I love you. Thank you.